Hello, my name is Nabil El-Ghoroury, and I am the Executive Director of the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. And I'm pleased to have with me today Dr. Mimi Hoang, who is going to be presenting at the CAMPT annual conference this year, and she'll be talking on bisexual affirmative psychotherapy. So, Dr. Hoang, where do you currently work, and what are your clinical specializations?
Hi, well, thank you so much for inviting me to this interview. So currently, I am a staff psychologist at Loyola Marymount University Student Psychological Services. And so I work there full-time. I also do part-time work as adjunct faculty at Antioch University, Los Angeles. And I work also as a consultant and trainer on diversity and wellness topics. And, you know, I've done really mostly community mental health and university counseling center settings because of my interest and passion in working with young people and the underserved. And my specialties overall really are women's issues, gender and sexuality, just the whole spectrum of that, culture, ethnicity, in particular Asian American identity issues, first generation college students, you know, in the universities that I've worked with, as well as body image, dating, family conflicts, grief and loss. Yeah.
Do you have a private practice?
I don't. My main 9 to 5 is working at LMU clinically. And, you know, I have my side positions as well as a lot of community involvements, which, you know, I can talk more about.
Okay, great. So tell me about your experience working with bisexual, pansexual, and non-monosexual communities.
Yes, of course. So, you know, I had my own personal journey coming out as bisexual. And, you know, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I really didn't have any terminology for what I was going through at the time. You know, there really wasn't internet. You couldn't easily search things. And so I really didn't even hear the word bisexual until I got to college. So in college, I came out, and it was a really eye-opening experience for me. And pretty much soon after that, I really became a leader in the community. I started a bisexual group at my college at UCLA, which is called Fluid. And I was able to start meeting other people, bisexual, pansexual, fluid, queer, which we're calling Bi Plus as an umbrella term. So I met so many people in the Bi Plus community who were like me, who really didn't have a lot of support growing up, role modeling and that kind of thing. And so that really galvanized my leadership. So that was in '99, and then I did my dissertation while in grad school on bisexual identity and identity congruence, and I got significant results, and it made me really excited to spread that, you know, spread the gospel to the community. So I started another group at that time in 2006 called AMBI, which is now pronounced AMBI, AMBI, which is the Los Angeles Bisexual Social Community. And it has now grown exponentially. It's on meetup.com. It has over 2,000 members just in Los Angeles. And there are now chapters in other cities, other states, and also now in South Africa.
Oh, wow.
Which is really, really, really exciting. But just goes to show you the need for community. So after that, I co-founded in 2008 the Los Angeles Bi Task Force, which is a nonprofit. And we promote education, cultural enrichment, and advocacy for the Bi Plus community. We've held workshops, panels, many different settings. We've marched in pride parades and held, you know, celebrate bisexuality events and things like that. So all of this community building really kind of got my name out there on a national level. And in 13, I was privileged to be invited to the White House as a part of a group of 33 bi plus leaders for the Bisexual Community Roundtable, which was the first of its kind.
Yeah.
You know, we were finally federally, nationally recognized as an entity, as a community. And so we had the chance to talk to the government officials about who we are and what we need. And I presented specifically, my portion was on bisexual mental health because of my background as a psychologist. So I gathered all this data, and I was surprised to learn sort of all of these statistics that bisexual people actually are the largest subgroup within LGB.
Really?
Lesbian, gay, bisexual.
Wow.
We're the largest subgroup. And we are actually a slight majority. We're 52%.
Wow.
So that was really surprising, pleasantly surprising.
Yeah.
On sort of a more sad note, we also discovered some disheartening statistics on some of the health disparities
Yes.
that are facing the bi plus community, even in comparison to lesbian and gay. So there are medical disparities, higher rates of smoking, cholesterol, and mental health, higher rates of pretty much all the mental health diagnoses, and suicidality. Yeah, and so this really presented some really serious concerns, and so I brought that back to Los Angeles, and created a needs assessment survey to just find out what's going on with my community. And so, you know, I continue to write and work with my community. And last year, I launched Bi on Life, which is a self-empowerment series for the Bi Plus community. I really wanted to help my community gain self-knowledge, self-confidence, and, you know, really learn how to live and be high on life. So I've done a lot, as you can tell. I've written a lot, spoken a lot about this, and helped to build many different communities.
Okay, thank you very much for that. You certainly have a ton of experience. For some of our attendees who may not know some of these terms, what is pansexual and what does non-monosexual mean? Because those are terms that not everyone has heard about.
Yeah, so let me maybe first just define bisexual, because there are important demarcations between all of these. So bisexual is really the acknowledgement that you have attractions to more than one gender. Okay, and that can mean men, women, people of other genders. It includes cisgender people and transgender people. And it doesn't have to be to the same degree or intensity or at the same time. So there's just that capacity to have that attraction to more than one gender. So that's bisexual. Pansexual is the capacity to be attracted to people of all genders. So, you know, it's really everyone on the gender spectrum. And it, you know, in some ways sounds a little bit similar, but there's a bit of a nuance difference. Bisexual is attraction to more than one, and pansexual is attraction to all genders. Yeah. Now, fluid, which I've mentioned, is another identity label, and it is a little bit more, I think, inclusive and doesn't necessarily separate between the genders, and also takes into account the potential for maybe some flux over time. Yeah, and gets away also from using the term sexual, which sometimes can, you know, just be sort of a strong term, you know, in everyday language, and also gets away from the bi, which some people I think associate with the binary, or sort of that notion of 50-50, like that you have to, you know, like men and women 50-50. So fluid is, I think, a little bit more inclusive in that way.
Mhm.
And non-monosexual is really kind of the catch-all for all the other identity labels that are out there, and there are just so many, which I will explain in my workshop at camp. But so, there's just a lot of other labels that people might use: omnisexual, queer, biromantic, things like that. So it just is, a lot of those terms there in that big umbrella by plus.
Well, that's a great segue. So I would love to hear, what will attendees get out of going to attending your workshop?
Yeah, so my workshop is 3 hours, and I'm going to be covering a lot of these things, some sort of laying the groundwork on what the BI 101 is, and just in case people really haven't had any of that information or education. So I'll be covering things like what the attractions are, physical as well as romantic,
Mhm.
looking at behavior, sexual and romantic, dating, looking at the labels. And this will go for men, women, youth, elders, across the lifespan. And I'll also discuss the identity development models out there that, so that we can understand sort of how people move through those life phases. And there are there's stage models as well as my congruence model, which I'll explain a little bit more, and it's based on my research. And then I'm going to define for people what biphobia is, because I think sometimes people don't even recognize that what they're doing or saying might actually be biphobic, and how that actually manifests. And then likewise is bi erasure, because a lot of times there's an invisibility around bisexuality. People get really lumped into a certain category because of the gender of their current partner.
Right.
So if I'm with a man, then people will assume that I am straight.
Correct.
If I'm with a woman, people will assume that I'm gay or lesbian. Right? And so that creates a lot of invisibility and erasure, as well as sometimes I think history books and even the media will, sort of mislabel or change someone's label, even though they've already explicitly come out. So I'm going to go over all of that, some of the isms and oppressions, and then how to become more bi-affirmative. So I'm going to really describe that, what that looks like, some clinicians' tools. So I'm going to cover, theory. I'm going to have some video. We're going to have discussions and some case vignettes. And, because for me, whenever I go to a CE class, I want to make sure that I leave there with some actual tools.
Right.
Right?
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yes.
So why should people who don't specialize in treating LGBT clients attend your workshop?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because there may be people out there who are, maybe this isn't what I'm doing, maybe I specialize in eating disorders or, family stuff, and this isn't necessarily something that I, routinely address in my clinical work. And, my question really is, have you had, any clients who've come into your office who have identified as bisexual, pansexual, fluid, or queer? And, have you felt like you were equipped to handle it? Have you, was it just sort of things that you maybe just thought you heard about on TV or in the movies, but have you actually really heard from an expert, a psychologist? About the statistics, know about the prevalence and all of that. So do you feel like you have any background and knowledge in that? Even if you don't, haven't had explicitly clients who are bi plus, perhaps friends or family members who have come out to you, and did you feel like you were able to really provide them that, compassion, that caring, that support, or even advocacy, for them? So I think these are things that are important to ask. And, a lot of MFTs or therapists do couples work, right? And, I'm curious if there's been couples who've come into your office who either one or both partners might be bisexual or even just exploring or curious. And then how do you address that within the relationship, which can sometimes be, quite challenging and stressful for all parties involved. So I think it can be very, very relevant. And through a lot of my community, research and things in the bi needs assessment that I did, we asked bi plus people about their experiences coming out to their therapists, as well as other healthcare providers. And we actually gathered a lot of comments about therapists who said things that were offensive or just really showed a lack of knowledge. And clients can pick up on this, even if they're not necessarily identifying as bi plus, perhaps they're calling themselves straight or even gay. But the things that the therapist says will let that client know if it's safe to really explore or discuss bisexuality. So, I think that, if therapists were to learn more about that, they would be a lot more interested in coming.
I mean, it's not even what a therapist says potentially, but what's written down on their forms or on their website. All that can convey attitudes. And
absolutely,
you never know which client might be struggling with a bi identity, but then sense you're not comfortable with it and then not holds that back from you. And then is that very effective? So so I'm going to ask the flip of that question, which is, why should someone who feels they already understand LGBT issues attend your workshop?
Okay. Yeah, people might have, taken a class here or there. Maybe they've, are involved in the LGBT community themselves, or maybe they identify as LGBTQ plus, right? I think that there's still a lot to learn because there are similarities with gay and lesbian identity issues. I mean, sure, bi plus folks, we have to come out. We deal with homophobia. We deal with, living in a heteronormative world that maybe assumes we don't exist or assumes that there's something, wrong with us or unhealthy about us. And, we may be in same-sex relationships, which, kind of gets us into that, gay kind of spectrum, right? But there's also differences for bi plus folks in our experiences. Our coming out internally may be a little bit different because we're really navigating the same sex stuff, but also the other gender stuff.
Right.
Those feelings, those attractions. How do I date this person? How do I, approach them? How do I have a healthy relationship? That's going to be different. So, dealing with the coming out, like internally, that may look different. Also, we're also dealing with the biphobia that is coming at us from both the gay and the straight. So that in itself is also different from the gay and lesbian experience. And I think, again, it can be really invisible. I think people still kind of tolerate bullying, harassment, making jokes about people who are bi plus. Yeah. Whereas I think if someone kind of outright made a homophobic joke, against a gay person or a lesbian person, that might be like, oh my God, like that's not okay. So I still feel like even in the LGBT, that the B in LGBT still gets sort of made fun of.
Or gets the least attention.
Gets the least attention, exactly. And like I mentioned, we are such a large subgroup.
Right.
So if you really want to understand LGBT, you need to understand the B in LGBT because we are such a large group. And, I've done a lot of these trainings, and people come up to me afterward, gay and lesbian folks who are in the field, and this is what they do. And even they're like, yeah, I learned so much, from your workshop. Even people who are bi plus, they come to me. People who've done community building and leadership, they come to me. They're like, oh my God, I just never heard all of this research and this information. Like I kind of knew it in my heart, but to actually hear someone, actually echo that professionally, it was really, really powerful for them. So I think, these are all, reasons that people, even though they think, yeah, I know this stuff, that they could really still learn something.
Well, that's the great thing about conferences and online lifelong learning is that we can always learn more. Even if when we think we know everything, there's still more to learn. And that's, I think, one of the best things about going to conferences and attending workshops in areas that's your expertise and in areas that are completely outside of your zone. So I want to thank you, Dr. Hoang, for this taking part of the day.
My pleasure.
And for speaking at our conference. You'll be speaking on Friday, the 26th of April in the morning, and the topic will be bisexual affirmative psychotherapy. And I want to encourage CAMP members to look at our conference and sign up. There is a lot of great sessions at this meeting, and I think we will definitely be able to expand your horizons and learn more and get some great CEs. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing all of you there, and look forward to seeing you, Dr. Hoang.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.